G'day, how are you? Yes, welcome to my hobby room. Now look, I've been rigging ships for most of my life, well, not real ones, little scale model ones. I've been doing them for about, over half a century. Back in the 60s, I used to build them and they'd be just, bit of old string or my mum's wool, and I'd throw on these crappy old bloody plastic ratlines. They're bloody dreadful, thick as all hell, and they looked awful, and you'd slap paint on them, they're not twice as thick. Rubbish, absolute rubbish. Later on, got onto sort of Airfix kits, and still building those today. I love them. And they come, for the most part, with these sort of things, right? There's they're ratlines, and with the shrouds all built in. It's sort of like a bit of fiberglass or something, and it's got some. It's not quite plastic. It's sort of like a rubber thing over it. They're sort of okay, but they're all one uniform thickness, which is not right, and they tend to be sort of blobby and flashy, especially later on. They got more junk on them than they're any good, so they're no bloody good. So got rid of those, So I moved on, and then as years went by, I started doing it more and more with cordage and waxing it and that sort of thing. Then at one stage, I did this little thing, right? I rigged this tiny little ship. I used to nip on maroon. Now here, I cheated, and I used photo etch ratlines, right? And that was okay because this is 1/350th scale, so it's pretty bloody small to do any sort of thing other than adding cordage. As it was, I'd kind of used some easy line on it, and after 2 years, you know what happens to easy line when it's sitting in a cabinet, it's in a nice warm room near a fire? Whew, Thanos effect. It all evaporated, disappeared to nothing. Then I took on the Bounty. This is the Revell kit, and I did a lot of scratch work on this. It's much more than the basic Revell kit. I tell you, I did a ton of work on this. Big long series of videos for that. Be a link at the end of this video so you can see. And for that, I decided everything was going to be cordage, it was going to be to scale, and I would do cord ratlines. I would, at least the shrouds. The shrouds are cord, right? And that was good. I didn't do the deadeyes, they were still plastic, but I did all the shrouds in cordage, and they were great. When it came to putting the ratlines on, I thought, I don't want to sit there and tie 600 bloody knots. I'm a lazy old bastard. So I came up with this, right? This is a rat harp, and that's a dead run at the bottom. So this thing basically lets you string all your cordage across there, whack it in under the shrouds, and you just glue it in place. Bingo bongo, the job's done in 5 minutes, well, maybe 6. And then I invented this thing here called a dead run, which I'll talk about more in this video, which allows you to get the correct angles and lengths for all your deadeyes and your channels, right? But now I'm working on the St Louis, and for this one, I wanted to go all out. I've got wooden deadeyes in there, and I've got my cordage in there, and I use my rat harp for doing a thing. I did use the rat harp on this one. Look at that. Look at those ratlines compared to those ratlines. They look the same, don't they? They're not. Those are plastic. Yes, these are 3D printed. And they're to scale. Yes, absolutely. It's a bit hard to sort of tell. I'll show you in the video. But they are 0.5mm shrouds and 0.3 or 0.25mm ratlines going across. They are to scale. So rather than those horrible old ones you used to get from Revell and all the rest of it, right? They weren't real nice. These are to scale, and they're flexible. And to all intents and purposes, they look just as good as corded ratlines. And they're a lot easier to put on. Well, the ratlines are easy to put on. The deadeyes are another thing. But we'll have a talk about that. Let's get on with it. Roll the music. So how did I go from a plastic, obviously looking, set of ratlines to something on my ship that looks so much more realistic, and in fact it's pretty well a match for that? That's cordage, that's plastic. I'm yet to put the bits on here. I'm going to show you how I did all that. So the first process is I removed some of the bits that I didn't need, and I gave it a coat of paint. So here I have cut out the lines that I don't need. Now I was lucky I did that in the 3D printer, removed them, but in theory, if you had a generic set of these from me, you just get in there very carefully and cut away the lines you don't need. Easy as that. But that will give me exactly the run that I need. And then I started painting. Well, I put the primer on them, right, which is Steiner Res. That's Steiner Res, I think it's pale mustard. Yep, pale mustard, which gives me that kind of jute colour. And then I went up and down on the shrouds with some rot brown, right? Only because the cordage that I've been using is a very dark brown, and that worked for me. But that won't necessarily work for you. It depends What, you might just want them all black, in which case just paint them a matte black. But what I've done is, it's going to be very hard to see, but you'll have to take my word for it. The shrouds are actually proud. Right? I'll run my finger across. Don't know if you can hear the clicking. Probably not. But the shrouds are proud. They set up about 0.2 of a millimetre, which means you can get a fine paintbrush and you can go the length of the shroud and you can basically paint them in. I wasn't that good doing mine that I had to then come along with the Steinerese again and just touch up. But that didn't take long, and it was quite a quick job to do. But the thing is, once they're painted, they completely change. Their look is so much different. So there you go. Those are painted. And you'll see the horizontal ratlines are the Duke colour, whereas the vertical shrouds are my dark brown. And they match the rest of my kit. Okay, it's the same look, same look. So that is the solution to making it look good. But next thing is, we want to get that on the model and we want to tie it in. And that's where my rigging tools come into effect. And this is an early prototype of the dead run for the St Louis. And you can still rig them up the way they used to, but there's a few other tricks we need to do so we can tie these deadeyes with channels in to our painted ratlines and end up with a result that looks almost as good as that. In fact, most people are never going to know the difference. Now, the first thing I'm going to have to figure out is how much of this I'm going to use, because these were designed so they sit basically with the little holder there all the way down, but you're not going to need this bottom bit. Okay, we'll need to cut away what we don't need so then we can tie on our deadeyes. Okay, so mine does sit nicely there. Yours might. You might need a little bit longer or a little bit shorter. You'll need to figure that out. So you need to figure out what the height is that you want this ratline to sit. Okay, because each ship will be slightly different. So you need to then know how much of this bottom you're going to need. You might need it all, or you might just need a bit. Now in my case, that does sit flush with the channel board, which is how I designed them, because I'm building this for me. So okay, I won't need that bottom bit, so how much do I lose? Well, if you've got one of my tools, you'll know exactly how much you need to lose, and it will be that exact height there. So I can actually put that. This is back to front, by the way. I didn't print, I didn't 3D print a port side one of these. So look, it's going to be a bit confusing, but I've got a stub one here, but I'm going to work backwards with my deadeyes when I put them on. Remember, it's Australia. I'm upside down. Everything's back to front. Goodness me. Anyhow, so if we have a look at this, and we place the bottom to there, because I know that bottom on mine is going to touch the channel board. You'll have to figure out where your channel board's going to touch. And then I have a look up, and it's the third run. 1, 2, 3. That's going to touch the top of the deadeye. Yours might be slightly different, but that's how mine's going to work for this particular application. So I don't need anything from below there. And in fact, really, if you were rigging, okay, because you're going to scream and go, yes, Harry, but you don't have the line right on top of the deadeye. No, you don't. That would actually be the line that you'd see. But to rig this, I'm going to need that bottom line, right? That line that's going to touch the deadeye. It'll make sense in a sec. Now, as my old woodworking teacher, Mr. Beaver, used to say, measure twice, cut once. We called him Mr. Beaver because he had 2 big front teeth. I don't remember his real name. I think I even used to call him Mr. Beaver in class, which is why I spent half my class outside the room. But that's another story, yes. Now, we've measured twice. We know it's 3. 1, 2, 3. So, here it is. Squeaky bottom time, because I don't want to bugger this up. 1, 2, 3. So, I need to cut there, okay? I have the luxury that if I gaff this, I'll be able to print another set. But no, we worked it out. It was keep the third one. Now, being this is PLA, but I'll probably print them in PETG, which is much more heat resistant, because we had a few things sent overseas that kind of warped from PLA, because it's nice and hot in your summer up there. And when I first started sending out a lot of my tools, it was sort of winter time. Nothing melted. So I've now cut that down to size. Okay. Now here's the trick. Here's a set of channels that I put together in my dead run. Okay, and I've shown all that in previous videos. There will be a link at the end of this video to those videos if you need to see how that wonderful little tool works. So they're all channeled up, glued in, and I have a chain plate sort of at the bottom there. It's actually a piece of florist wire. And instead of usually running a whole shroud, I've just tied a few lengths. Now I've made them about the same length as the deadeye run. Okay, so the length of the channels, I made my two little pieces the same. And there's a method to my madness, because what we're going to do now is I'm going to attach that to here. Now, if I'd cut this bottom piece off, right, this bottom ratline run here, then I'd have to sort of try and attach in mid-air to that end, okay? And probably the only way you could do that is to super glue that on there, which really wouldn't be that effective. And I also need binding. So what I've worked out is, if I actually tie this, right, through that hole there and tie it onto there, I'll achieve two things. One, I've got leverage, because I can pull against that ratline that I'm not going to need, and I can also tie 2 or 3 knots and get a fake sort of binding. So it should look rather good. Time to start tying this. Now, I've got 2 little pieces of cord here, which I thought would be perfect for tying this knot, but actually it turned out that I really needed a long one and a short one, which we will discover later. But it wasn't really too hard to do this. I found you needed 2 different knots, one way and one the other way, otherwise it would twist your deadeye. So once you've got both of them tied in both directions, it'll settle down very nicely, and there you go. We are attached, and what we're going to do is glue that into place. It's going to be a lot easier if I hold it with something. So yeah, I'm running out of hands here as usual, so if I'm very careful I should be able to just rest that on there. Yeah, now the whole thing's not flopping around in midair. Plus also, I think I've made one of these a little bit too short. So do as I say, not do as I do. I've resorted to using 2 little clammy things here to make sure that it doesn't spin around. But you can see I've got that tied on, so I've got my knots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little dab of white wood glue, which is just going to seal the deal, make sure they don't unravel. So the last thing I want is that happening. And I can also make sure that it's twisted around to the correct angle that I want. So I want this thing to, you know, sit that way. Hold everything. I think I've buggered up. No, look. Look. I've just put the first 5 on and tied them, as I was just about to show you. And they look great, but I've just done dry fit. And I've realised the problem. There's no way to tension this, right? Because the whole thing is one thing. I can't do what I normally do. So normally, I make up the channels, right? And they've got a shroud on them. And you connect, you know, down on the channel board. Okay, so that part's mounted to the channel board, nice and firm. And then you run your shroud up the mast. And then I pull everything up. And see the little lines, the channels? They tighten up. Okay, they're not round and slack. They're nice and tight. So that's the thing, you've got tension. Trouble with this is, and what I hadn't realised is a new thing, is that if I try and, the only place I've got tension is down the bottom here, right? If I try and pull that one, everything pulls. If I pull that one, you know, everything pulls, okay? I've got a problem. I cannot individually tension lines and make sure the whole thing actually fits together properly. Or can I? What I might try is, instead of tying these rigged channels with their deadeyes to the ratline before I put it on, because I say that only gives me pulling on this bit to tension it, and that really doesn't work because it pulls on everything. So what I'll do is, just like the ones that have the shrouds on normally, is I will fix this to the model, then I bring the ratline in and tie to that shroud on the model. Okay, so ignore that little bit there. All right, so it'll be like this, but it'll have its extra bit of string on there. Okay, so I'll tie that on there, which means I can then use that as my tension point. If I need a little more or a little less, I can tighten that up. That will give me tensioning all the way through. I've now tied all these little deadeyes here with their channels. They are tied to the channel board, so they're holding in place. And the trick now, I hope, is that I can simply use a little bit of cordage I've left on top of them and I will tie that off to the corresponding shroud that's coming down. It's kind of the opposite way to how I do it when I'm doing, ones like here, where I've got cordage, whereas the cordage includes all the channels and you basically glue it and screw it to the bottom. That wasn't working. So these ones here, I still don't know how I'm going to tie them. I'm going to have to put weights underneath there and try and get some tension happening. But anyhow, let me tie these on there and we should have a finished product. Trying to get these guys to tension up with the ratline has proved impossible. It's a big floppy thing in the air, couldn't be done. Eventually I realised if I actually folded it down and then used a clamp down here, which is kind of how I tied everything off originally, then I had something a little more rigid to work with. It means you're kind of working upside down and it's just, it's tricky. First one was the nightmare because I had the cordage just far too short. Luckily, after that, I started making them fairly generous, and that should be easier. So what you have to do here is actually flip them over, tie them to their upside down. So, yeah, no matter what you do, doing it this way is hard. You're much better off. If you're going to use plastic ratlines, I think you better use plastic deadeyes. Just glue the buggers together, and you're done. Anyhow, I'll persevere, see what I can make out of this. Well, I've mucked around and messed about and I managed to get a good result. You really need that tension on there, and you do that by tying it hard at the top. Interestingly, the first 4 that I put in, and I'd already tied them to the ratlines above and thought that wasn't going to work, I'd never be able to get them straight and, put them in later. They worked the best. They actually clicked in nice and easily. I just used some clamps to hold down the channel sort of plate here, right? And they tensioned up perfectly. They were good. These ones over here, where I thought midstream I changed horses and went, no, I need to attach them to the bottom first, and then I'll tie them on there and be able to tension them all up, as you do with normal ratlines, right? As I did here, okay? So with these ones here, yeah, they were all put on, and then you pulled the line up, the shroud, and you tensioned and tied it off. Well, you don't have that luxury with plastic ratlines because it's a thing, it's fixed. You can't pull one line, it affects all of them, all right? So that would have worked, and if I'd kept with that method, right, tie them off, bind them to the plastic, right, tie all your deadeyes to there, and then come back later and just glue them in, it'd be a lot easier and a lot faster, and you get a better result. So I'm going to cut all these off and have another go at this, but I won't... it won't make you wait another week for that to happen. I'll just show you that next time when I get all the rest done. So look, what do we take from this? Plastic ratlines, yes, you can make them and you can make them to scale and they don't look too bad. Okay, they don't look too bad at all. Now, you'd be better off if you then just attach them to plastic deadeyes from your kit. Easy. Just cement them on, cement everything in, you're away. If you're going to go the route of wooden deadeyes and you want to do it, like I've done so it looks more realistic, yeah, you're going to need to attach them to the plastic ratlines at the top first and then basically do the final gluing of your channel plate afterwards, and that will work, okay? Otherwise, as you can see, these are kind of higgledy-piggledy. They'd be okay. Some people would say that's fine and they'd be happy with that. I'm not. I'm going to pull those off. I'm going to have another go. All right, because that's just what I want to do. It's just not good enough for my model. But those, surprisingly, they're not too bad. And they've pulled up as well as those. So I'm actually happy with that. So there is a method. Just don't do it the way I did it. Or do it the way I did it first. Anyhow, look, on that huge disappointment and cock up of a video... button, hit buttons. Oh, look, do something. Like, comment, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. And look, buy me a curry. I really need one after this. This has been quite a frustrating exercise. I've proved what not to do. So that in itself is a success. Don't do that. Do that. All right. Goodbye from Australia. And let's hooroo from Harry Houdini. Yes, Bask. Yes. I know there were a lot of bad words. I know, Bask. I'm really sorry. Yes, Bask. I'll feed you now. I'm really sorry about all the bad words. Oh, dear. Yeah, I didn't mean to say